Hi everyone, how are you? Mike and Lewis are both tied up at the moment, so it's just me today again. I know you're getting sick of me. Today I'm going to talk about the differences between the Sonus Faber Sonetto 3 G2, boy what a mouthful, and the Mofi Sourcepoint 888, another more mouthful. I'm going to shorten it. I'm going to call them the Sonus Faber and the 888. Okay, so going forward, hopefully that makes sense. I'm going to just cover a little bit of the technical specifications of the two, and Curtis is going to overlay all the tech details in a sort of a format, table format, so that you can see the differences between the two of them. Right off the bat, when you put the two speakers side by side, you'll notice that the Sonus Faber is substantially smaller than the Mofi. And here are some of the relevant details. The Mofi 888 has two 8-inch woofers, one 8-inch mid-range, and one 1.25-inch silk dome tweeter, whereas the Sonetto, the Sonus Faber, has one 6.5-inch mid woofer. In other words, it's a mid-range and a woofer, one 6.5-inch woofer, and one 1.1-inch silk dome tweeter. So on paper alone, the drivers of the Sonus Faber are substantially smaller than the Mofi. The Mofi is also physically much larger. Well, not necessarily much taller, it's not, but it's wider and it's deeper. It's rated for 32 to 30,000 cycles, the Mofi. The Sonus Faber is 38 to 40. And here's the other thing. The Mofi is 96.2 pounds, and the Sonetto is only 56.88. So not quite half, but for all intents and purposes, almost half the weight. The one thing that's also important, the Mofi has two ports in the back, one for the mid-range and one for the bass. The Sonus Faber has one rear port for the mid-range, but it's a down-firing port for the bass. Okay. It's almost like David and Goliath, and so I titled my review notes, David and Goliath. As you would expect, the Mofi has a big sound. It reminds me of American muscle cars. You know, when I was much younger, I had just come to Canada. I was required to do a half term in grade 13. The young kids today have no idea what grade 13 is. You go from grade 12 straight into college or university. Back then, there was such a thing as a grade 13. I was required to do a half term. And one of my friends in school one day said, "Let me take you home." So we go to the parking lot, and he's got this American muscle car. I didn't know anything about American muscle car other than I know that this car was huge, like huge. Compared to all the other cars in the parking lot, anybody who was driving at the time who were in school was driving small cars like Hondas and things like this, but this guy's car was almost double the size. I was to find out later that he had a Barracuda. And as soon as he turned the car on, I heard this big rumble. Almost sounded like there was no muffler. And I mentioned, and I remember, I knew nothing about cars at this point. And I said, "Wow, this car is loud." And you could see him beam. He says, "Yes, it is." And I meant it as a pejorative. I thought there was something broken. He says, no, this is the way it's supposed to sound. It's rumbly, it's loud, it's rude. Anyway, we drive down, and then when the road was clear, he says, "Want to feel something?" I said, "Sure." He steps on the gas, and I'm thrown back, and that was my first experience of a performance vehicle. That's what the Mofi sounds to me like. When you listen to the Mofi, it's egging you on. It's saying, turn it up, crank it, open it up. And when you do, it'll stun you. The bass is big, it's bold, it's powerful, it's relentless. It's saying, you know, listen to me. It's like Mike Tyson in his prime. It'll just knock you out, right? But here's the other thing that's really interesting. The mid-range is smooth. It's buttery smooth. It's almost too smooth for my taste. It's so, my gosh, caramelly like. It's not that it's missing any detail. It's not. It's just so smooth. Same with the highs. Images are very precise and very sharp. I wish they were a little bit bigger, but the images are beautiful pinpoint imaging. Height is good. It's right about the height of the speaker, maybe a little bit taller, but it's right about there, and the soundstage is very wide. Soundstage depth is maybe not as deep as I would like it to be, but not foreshortened by any means. Just that, it's always nice to have really deep soundstage. My macro dynamics are definitely the star of the show. They can go from soft to loud like you wouldn't believe. Just incredible. Micro, not as impressive as macro. Turning to the Sonus Faber, it's almost the opposite in the sense that you look at this almost tiny speaker in comparison and you don't expect much. As a matter of fact, when we first did the unboxing and then the comparison of the Sonus Faber G2 versus the G1, and again, Curtis will link all these videos below in the description. Somebody said you should compare the Sonus Faber to the Mofi, and we had every intention to do so anyway. And so when I put them side by side, my first thought was, oh my God, I'm going to regret this, because the Sonus Faber is going to get killed. There's no way it's going to be able to stand beside the Mofi. But surprisingly enough, it does. Now, there are some areas it won't. We'll get to that. Talking about the strengths first, it's clearer. It's got more of an open sound. You hear more of the details right off the bat. Now, I want to hasten to say, it's not like the Mofi is missing the detail. It's just more in the space compared to the Sonus Faber that just brings it out. I recently bought a piece of jewelry for my wife for her birthday, and there are all kinds of wonderful brands out there. There's a company called Hearts of Fire, I think it's called, and they specialize in cutting the diamond in such a way that it really brings out the sparkle, if you will, the fire. That's their patented cutting technology. And sure enough, when you take one of their products under light compared to some other brand that's also very highly regarded, you can see that the Hearts of Fire just brilliant, incredibly brilliant in comparison with something else. And in a way, that's sort of like the comparison between the Sonus Faber and the Mofi. The Mofi is very good. The Sonus Faber is like, wow. It's like, oh my God, I can hear all the details so easily, effortlessly, without straining. It's all there. I'll give you some musical examples in a moment. And that's true from the bass all the way up to the highs. It's just all there. You can hear the guitar plucks, you can hear the bass notes better, you can hear dense, during dense instrumentation, you can hear the details better. Soundstage is just about as wide, but sense is deeper, and it's a bit more intimate. So when you're listening to vocals, that vocalist comes into room a little bit more. It's a bit more intimate. Separation of instruments is also better with the Sonus Faber, although the Mofi is sharper. I don't really know how to sort of describe this, but when I hear the Mofi, I can hear the placement of the instruments very precisely. The Sonus Faber is a little bit less precise, but bigger. The images have more dimension. It's hard to say which I prefer. I wish I could have both. Sonus Faber's soundstage height is a little bit taller as well. Microdynamics, the Sonus Faber is better. The little trills, the little nuances that the musician or the vocalist does, you can hear more of. You can follow it better. Macro, no, not as good as the Mofi. So while the Mofi is American muscle, the Sonus Faber reminds me of like an 80s Alfa Romeo, manual clutch, gearbox, in some ways more engaging in terms of being able to make everything happen yourself, whereas with the Barracuda, you just basically, push the gas down. It's like two different kinds of enjoyment. Let me give you some examples of what I'm talking about in terms of the music. Steve Strauss, Angel. With the Mofi, you get this delicious, warm sound. His voice comes out and it's got this beautiful richness that's just very engaging. It's like folksy, just very relaxed, puts you in a place where you're just listening to the lyrics. He's, very inviting. Sonus Faber, you hear more in the recording. You hear more of the song that he's singing. Better microdynamics, as I mentioned. Veronica Swift, This Bitter Earth. With the Mofi, the piano is powerful and rich and dynamic, and you can hear the viola accompanying it, and you instantly know it's a viola. When I first heard it, I've heard this song multiple times, but I never really thought about the instruments. So when I heard the viola, at first I thought it was a violin, and I thought, no, it's a richer, lower tone than the violin. So I looked it up, and sure enough, it's a viola. With the Sonus Faber, it's even clearer in terms of the string notes and her voice and the piano. Oh my God, when the piano plays loud, you hear the sound reverberating within the body of the piano more. You hear the soundboard more. You hear the strings more. Again, it's all there with the Mofi. It's just sort of part of the tapestry, whereas with the Sonus Faber, you hear it. It's almost as if you had a camera and the camera zooms in with the Sonus Faber, whereas with the Mofi, it's more zoomed out a little bit. And then another cut, Renaud Garcia Fon's Berimbas. So he plays this big double bass, and this particular cut, there's a guitar and the double bass, and when you listen to the double bass with the 888, it just fills the room, it shakes the room, it's powerful, it's authoritative, it's visceral, it's, oh my God, you're so involved with it. With the Sonus Faber, you hear the guitar as well. With the Mofi, the guitar is there, but it's the double bass. With the Sonus Faber, oh, there's a guitarist. It's there as well. It's there. It's just somehow with the Mofi, you hear double bass so much more. And boy, what an incredible job it does with the double bass. But with the Sonus Faber, you hear the guitar, and you hear that the guitar is an acoustic guitar. It's a nylon string. It's a beautiful sound. So it's sort of like one lets you hear more, and the other one here lets you hear the whole music, maybe more in perspective. And certainly when there's bass, my God, it'll scare the heck out of you. And speaking of bass, perennial favorite, Boss Gags, thanks to you. So I first heard this recording many, many, many years ago when Peter McGrath came to visit. Peter McGrath from Wilson Audio, and he played this recording. And I remember I would then use this recording to help set up with the Wilson speakers and so on, because there's a particular part at 2 minutes and 7 seconds, and again at 2 minutes 40 seconds, where the bass, double bass goes, electric bass all the way down, and then it just rumbles through the floor. The first time I was playing this recording, I was in a different location, and we had wood floors, and the wood floors, the bass traveled down through the wood floors, rumbled through the wood floors, and it would come up your feet. It was an insane feeling, insane. So of course, with the Sonus Fabers, let's start with the Mofi. The Mofi did all of that and more. My walls were shaking, the ceilings were rattling, and the bass just was amazing. With the Mofi, I just gave up. There was no hint that there was this deep bass. I was thinking, oh my God, what happened to the bass? It's almost as if it's missing an entire deep octave. Is that a good or bad thing? Of course, in this case, it's a bad thing. But then on the other side of it, I hear all the clarity and the detail that the Mofi didn't present as well. It just wasn't quote unquote there. Which was more impressive? Well, strictly from a performance playback demo standpoint, the Mofi for sure. I mean, you want to shake the pants, that's the Mofi. So it's a trade-off to some degree. Finally, Mahler Symphony No. 5 with Riccardo Ciali and the Royal Concertgebouw Orchestra. First movement, turn it up, turn it up. The trumpet plays, and with the Mofi, it's got this beautiful golden glow. The trumpet sounds gorgeous, and it's right channel behind the speaker. With the Sonus Faber, it's the same thing, but it's a little bit deeper, and the bell of the horn, the trumpet, is even clearer. And then suddenly this big climax, big symphonic climax. And again, remember, I'm playing it quite loud at this point. With the Sonus Faber, I scare the living daylights out of myself because it's so loud. I start thinking, oh my God, it's going to break the speakers. It doesn't, but it's that loud. With the Mofi, no problem whatsoever. It's just loud and big and boisterous and thunderous, but then loses some of the clarity, loses some of the detail. So here's the short conclusion. It really depends. Both speakers have amazing strengths, as I've tried to outline. If you like your music mostly loud, you've got a lot of recordings you'd like to play that has a lot of bass, you've got a big room, you've got electronics that are neutral to even a bit bright, the Mofi may be a better choice for you because it will handle all of that and more really well, and it will take your electronics and make it sound normal, not bright, not high lit, not aggressive. If your music does, if you like that kind of music as well, but maybe more intimate type of music, more acoustic, less emphasis on deep bass, you like detail, you like clarity, and your room is not that big, then the Sonus Faber may be a better choice. I was thinking about electronics and what each of them would sort of be like. The Mofi reminds me more like the Macintosh, as I say. It's warm, it's inviting, tons of power. It'll play almost all kinds of music really, really well. It never superimposes a brightness to the sound. It doesn't highlight detail necessarily. It's just all part of the music. It's always engaging. It's always enjoyable. Whereas the Sonus Faber is, in that sense, more like an accuphase. The mid-range is gorgeous, dynamic, micro-dynamics are incredible. You hear lots and lots and lots of detail. The deep bass is not quite as powerful as the Macintosh. It's still there, it's just not quite as powerful. And it's more selective of recordings. If you have great recordings, it'll blow you away. If the recordings are not as good, the mid-range quality of the accuphase will show it to be not a great recording. So hopefully that helps to explain the details that I hear. Now the crazy thing is that they're both in the $5,000 US range. The Mofi is $49.99. The Sonus Faber is $44.99, so $4,500. So $500 separates the two. The other thing that will come into consideration is, of course, aesthetics, and that's something that only you can decide whether you like one or the other. One is big, more bulky. The Sonus Faber is smaller, more elegant perhaps, but some people will say it's small and puny. Again, something that only you can decide. Anyway, that's a wrap. If you have any questions, put them in the comments below. If you've heard the two, I would love to hear your comments, see what you thought. And anyway, hope you enjoyed this video, and we will see you again next time. Take care. Bye-bye.